Okay, we're holding towards the end of Siman Pei Zayin. Maybe by next week we'll be in Pei Zayin. Sif Vav in the Ramah. We're going to Sif Zayin Ches. Just a quick review. From the Gemara, it's mashma that we are Medayik. We see from certain words that the Torah uses specifically that it comes to either include or exclude certain things. That is the drashas in the Torah Shebal Peh, in the oral word. In the oral Torah that we have all the details that are not clearly specified in the Torah. Torah says, Lo tevashel gdi b'chalev imo, not to cook a gdi, a calf, in its mother's milk. And because of the choice of words here, the Chachamim have a Mesorah, that's the tradition, that it comes to teach us quite a few halachas. Just from that one pasuk alone, we not only have the Isser of cooking meat and milk, and therefore also not eating the combination of the two which were cooked, or not benefiting from that combination, which is as a result of the fact that we find that this provision has been repeating 3 times. But besides that we have 3 isurim in Basar בחלב, we also are able to learn from that pasuk, from the choice of words, what exactly is asur and what is not asur. So the Gemara in Maseches Chulin deals with all these drashas, what we learn from chalev imo, its mother's milk as opposed to somebody else's milk, right? So the choice of words makes a big difference here. And we went through some of the various types of milk that are not necessarily included in the prohibition, especially if something like chalev isha, from a woman's milk. It's obviously that is not part of the Yisur, that is not what was intended. Same thing with chalav of zachar, of a male. And other milk from an unclean animal and the like. These are all excluded. And we learn it out from the various words that the Torah uses in that prohibition. Now, we have, for example, the diuk of chalev imo, excluding chalev, or the milk of a meta, of a dead animal, or chalav shchuta, of a slaughtered animal. Since it says imo, we're talking about a live animal, an animal that can give birth, as opposed to an animal that can no longer give birth, something that is not like its mother. So we learn from that we can exclude midin Torah, that would not be included in the prohibition. It doesn't mean you can go ahead and do it. There is still an Isur D'Rabbanan involved in cooking with a chalav, with the milk of a dead animal. And this, of course, this is only the D'Rabbanan. And as we pointed out, this Isur is therefore relevant somewhat when we learn the halacha of how to prepare the kachal, the udder, or as it's called today in Hebrew, the atinim. So, in Hebrew today, modern Hebrew, right? Shach points out that there's no real difference between if this animal died on its own or if this animal died as a result of shchita, but that's only legabe the din of basar b'chalav. There is a bit of a difference, according to some poskim, as to the status of the milk of a nevela. Okay? Because in other words, let's say we're not dealing with the issue of basar b'chalav. Let's say we're just dealing with somebody wants to have a glass of milk. Can he have a glass of milk of an animal that is now dead? The milk that's coming out. So that's another question. The Shach just says that the gabi basar b'chalav, it makes no difference how he died. We know that it makes a difference how an animal dies, the gabi tuma. If an animal is slaughtered properly, even if it has treifot inside, there's no tuma. If an animal was not slaughtered properly, which makes it a nevela, or if it died or was shot, electrocuted, right? Which is what the Goyim prefer to do, by the way. They call that more humane. What we do is not humane. What they do is humane. Shoot it with a bullet in the brain. If you do that to the animal, it becomes a nevela too, and that, of course, brings about tuma to the animal. So that's not the question over here, of course, whether it has tuma or not. And as the Shach says, it makes no difference how it dies, v'gabed basar b'chalav, because ultimately we learn, the Gemara is a clear Gemara, we exclude that from chalev imo. But the question is, what about drinking a glass of milk from a nevela? So on that there's a machloket. There's a machloket on... No, yeah. Regarding nevela, you want to have a glass of milk from a nevela. So the Shach says, from the Diuk of the Gemara, it doesn't make a difference how she died. It's excluded from Chalev Imoy. V'lo Chalev Shchuta.
So the question is Legabe Basar B'chalav.
So it's not a question of Legabe Basar B'chalav.
In other words, it's not a problem.
It's not a problem. In other words, it's still an Isur D'Rabbanan, right? We have an Isur D'Rabbanan.
It's within Vela, no?
Right.
So you're not.
Oh, so that's the question. Is it Midoraitha or Midrabanan? Can you drink the milk of an Avela? All right? After it has died. Right. So it's a machloket, a poskim. There's a separate machloket in the poskim about the milk that comes from an Avela. An animal that died, was not slaughtered, for example. So the Drisha holds that there is no Isur Nevela in this milk, Minatorah. Only an Isur D'Rabbanan, in the same way that you'll find an Isur of a Beitza of a Nevela. Right? To take out the egg of an Nevela, it was not slaughtered, is a D'Rabbanan only. It's only Asur Midrabbanan. There's an Isur of a Beitza for a Nevela, Isur Midrabbanan. And that you find in Siman Pei Vov. If you're interested in Hilchos Beitzim, Betzat Refau Nevela, Dina Kedim Betzat Of Tameh. That's a separate halacha. 1 second. Betzat Nevela Utrafa, Afilu Nigmera Shekayotze Ba Nimkeret Bashuk Asura. Anyway, it's like that. It's like there's various halachas pertaining to the eggs. And that you find in Siman Pei Vav. But anyway, we're not going to go into that. But he wants to compare it to that halacha. In the same way that is asur, this one would also be asur, but it will only be an isur midrabanan. Okay, very simple. From the Shach, as he's explaining the whole diuk of basar b'chalav, he seems to be saying that there's no difference between milk from a mesa or milk from a shchuta. There doesn't appear to be an isur at all. Doesn't make a difference how it died. I mean, the milk is not asur. And the same thing, the Pri Chodesh says the same thing, the Chochmas Adam says the same thing. Doesn't appear to be any isur. In other words, it's not necessarily like an egg. And we have to explain what may be the difference between the shittas, why some would say yes and some would say not. But first, let me just quote to you what they say. In the Lechem Mishnah, which is one of the Meforshim on the Rambam, you look at the Rambam, you'll have the Magid Mishnah on one side, which is written by the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber. You have the Lechem Mishnah. You have the bottom, you have some additional Meforshim. So the Magid Mishnah, the Lechem Mishnah, Magid Mishnah is another one. The Lechem Mishnah, in this case, and the Rambam, he points out, from what I understood, that the Rambam holds that there would be an Isur Torah on this kind of milk, coming from a Nevela, an Isur Torah. Yeah. And the Pri Megadim says that, halacha l'maisa.
Oh, the Pri Megadim
say that? Yeah. I need to double check on that, but that's what I understood. The Pri Megadim brings down, the halacha l'maisa, that the milk from a Nevela, from a dead animal, would be asur min Torah. Beis Yosef seems to be saying that too in the Rambam, that he would get actually malchus, lashes, because of the Isur Nevela, and the same thing with the Bach.
And lahatchila, just face value, that makes good sense. I mean, why would it not?
Yeah.
If you're going to call milk ever minachai,
right,
and now the cow died without being slaughtered,
right,
then it should have the same status as it that died without slaughter.
Yeah. What if it did? What if it was slaughtered?
Who the cow was slaughtered?
Yeah.
So that it's not an.
Right, and therefore.
So then have.
What about Ever Minachai?
No, but if it was slaughtered.
The milk.
It says you shouldn't have the meat.
No, we don't.
It says you should have the meat with the mother's milk. It says
right.
With. It's just with. You should not have.
Yeah, no, but you're right. But here we're talking about a separate idea. Here we're talking about the isur of something that comes out of an animal that is not kosher.
Not.
Right, an animal that died, you cannot eat any part of it, right? Should you be able to have its milk? Now, there's some milk left over. It's a dead animal. Can you have it?
In the udder itself.
Right. There's milk left over. Now, we do know milk...
because the milk you could from the live animal without maybe if it died by itself.
Right.
It doesn't make a difference.
So I'm going to explain that next.
But that would be because... No, but you can take the milk from the live animal without shchita because...
If the animal is a treifa, as we explained last time, we know for sure it has a treifa. Its stomach was punctured or whatever, which was a problem that came up. then you cannot have the milk from it. And cheeses that were made from that milk are treif. Anything that comes from a treifa animal, it's a cow, but it's tarif. It has a hole. You can't eat the meat. You cannot drink its milk either. That which comes from a treifa is treif. That's the halacha. So the question here is, what about that which comes from a nevela? So they appear to be saying either it's a doraisa or derabanan, except for a few that appear to be saying that it's mutter. There's no problem with it. What seems to be the issue here?
With respect to what?
In other words, according to those who say it's mutter, their reasoning is that, hey, it was mutter before. The milk is fine. It just happens to be that a couple hours ago this animal died, but the milk that was there before was kosher when it was there. I mean, that's what they're saying. Well, why? Was that perhaps the logic of that shita?
But one could argue that the only reason kosher before the animal died, because of halal, which permits consuming milk while the animal is alive.
Is alive, perhaps.
But that the fact that we have there's a head to so does not remove that otherwise it's a live animal.
But it's not live anymore.
That's right. It's not.
No, but if it was considered a limb of a live animal when it was alive, now that it's dead, it would shita to be permissible. Because a limb of a live animal, once the animal dies, requires shita to eat, and the heter that we have to consume that milk and not be prevented from doing so by ever menachai is with a special drush. We have a special heter.
Yeah.
And that special heter doesn't take away.
Let me simplify it, but very much along the lines of what you're saying. Those who say that it's also basically they're saying that milk that is there now reverts back to being part of its meat. Right? Is that what you're saying?
It never left to that status. It was only that we had permission to eat this particular meat.
At the time that it was alive.
Yes.
Yes.
At the time it was alive.
Right. So now that it's dead, those that say it's usher, perhaps their reasoning is they don't give it. It reverts back to being a part of the meat. Well, I can't have any more part of that meat. While it was alive, I could. Now I can't.
Like we had, let's say we had a permission, a special drush that says you're allowed to eat the
because of exactly
ear.
No, because of exactly what you said.
Yeah,
because the drasha of milk comes from Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, and I'm allowed to have the milk even though it appears to be an ever min achai, which is a prohibition, right?
Good.
We cannot eat something from a live animal. So we have the pasuk that says this you can.
Right, and the same thing goes for honey.
Right, same for honey. But now maybe when it's dead, that drasha does no longer apply. So in other words, that reverts to being part of the meat, and I don't have the heter that I had while it was alive. Or, according to the others who hold, the milk was mutter at one time. Why should it all of a sudden become asur? Anyway, so that possibly is the simple explanation between the two.
It makes sense both ways.
Okay, yeah. Now, perhaps do things according to the right order. Sometimes we jump around. Maybe we should see the Ramah, which was the last part of Siv Vav. The last part of Siv Vav did cover different forms of cooking, which we went through more or less in detail. Whether it was smoked or whether it was cooked bechamei teveria, and so forth. Various forms of cooking. Now the Ramah comes up with a list, which I want to go through with you, of chumras. Now, what's a chumrah? A chumrah is not even a derabanan. A derabanan, something that is prohibited by derabanan, by rabbinic decree, is a form of siag, gader. You know what siag and gader means? Fences. Careful, don't do this, so you should not come to do the real thing. The real issue. We want you to stay back. There are derabanan that are only because of marisayin, only because of an impression. Still, it's a derabanan. Then we have something called a chumrah. It's a chumrah. A chumrah means it's an extra strict, how would you say chumrah, Ilan? Form of conduct? A stricter form of conduct, perhaps? A chumrah. What that some have taken upon themselves to be extra careful, just not to take a chance. And that's what these are. So we'll go through them quickly and see what the problem is. The Ramah says, before he begins with the chumras, Chalav zachar lo mikra chalav, by the way, he tells us that the milk of a male is not milk, whether it's a man or an animal. We explained that some say it's one, some say it's the other, some say it's both. Now, since it's not really milk, im nafal letoch dera shel basar eno oser. If it did fall, if any of them, a woman's milk is a problem, right? Nevertheless, a woman's milk, what do we say by a woman's milk? אסור לבשל, בחלב אישה מפני מראית עין, but ואם נפל לתוך התבשיל, בטל ואין צריך שיעור. It's batel because it's woman's milk. Some of the milk in the refrigerator that the woman pumped, she's breastfeeding and she went to work and she put in a bottle, and her husband by mistake, I don't know, it fell into the cont, into the chicken. You don't have to be worried about it. It's only a problem myself. So it's batel ve'en tzarich shiur. So similarly, he says here by chalav zachar lo mikra chalav klal ve'im nafal letoch darash basar en oser. In other words, it's not even an issue. Aval chalav meta, the other milks that we said of a dead animal, umei chalav, which we're going to explain again today, I think, the liquid of chalav, the whey permeate, as it may be called in English, osrim ha'ma'achal kemo chalav atzma. In other words, we have to be strict when it comes to chalav meta, mei chalav, no exceptions for that. We have to treat it like regular milk, even though it's midirabanan. Even bebishul, of course, we don't want to cook those items together. All right, this is the beginning of the Ramah. Now come the chumras. Yesh omrim. Some say, דאסור לחטות האש תחת גדרה של עובד כוכבים לפי שהם מבשלים בהם פעמים חלב פעמים בשר. That it's not a good idea to, how would you say in English, lachatot? Let me see if I remember the English word for it. In Spanish, it's atizar. To poke. There's another word for it, not to poke. When you move the coals, you want it to... Stoke. Stoke in English? Stoke the coal, yeah. Okay? In other words, to move the things around. So, yesh omrim dasur lachatot ha'esh tachat the pot of a goy. Somehow, the goy is cooking his stuff in your place or next to you. You're helping him out. Don't help him out if this pot belongs to the goy, because they sometimes cook meat, they sometimes cook milk, and whoever stokes the fire underneath under their pot for some reason, you may come to be cooking basar b'chalab. You're not having it yourself, of course you're not eating it, you're just helping, you do whatever you're doing there. You can't do that because one of the isurim in basar b'chalab is bishul. No matter whose milk and meat it is, makes no difference. You can't do it. So be careful. He says, don't stoke the fire underneath that kind of a gdera. All right. Oit kasu, they also wrote, in addition to that, the ein na'arev mayim shidichu bahem klei basar, imayim shidichu bahem klei chalav. Don't mix waters which were used to leadiach, to I'm forgetting my English. Yeah, to rinse. Okay, don't mix waters that were used to rinse meat dishes with mayim shidichu bahem klei chalav, with waters that were used to rinse dairy dishes. Don't mix them. And give them to drink to the animal. Animals have what they call a trough, I think in English, Trough. It's pronounced trough. In England, in America, or in Ireland? Yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah, you sure? Yeah, you know it.
Especially in English.
Yeah, because through you don't pronounce the GH. For some reason, trough you do.
Yeah,
trough.
Trough.
All right, that's the difficulty.
I think it depends on where it originates language.
Yeah. And you see why English is not an easy language? Anyway, is it trough? Okay. Anyway.
Now, there is another word that you're very familiar with. Problem.
Yeah.
The word.
Yeah, enough.
How do you spell GH?
Oh, that's a very good point. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so you put that. You want to pour the water into the shoket, as it's called in the Torah, in the Shana Kodesh, right? Rivka came and wanted to give the camels to drink. So where did you pour the water? From the well into one of those things. So you can't, be careful not to mix waters that were used to rinse fleishik and melichic dishes and give it to the animals to drink. Because of what? Because you can't have hana. The asurim behana'ah. Okay. Point number 2. Yeah. Separate. You can give them separately. The one water. Yeah. One after another. Don't mix them. We're going to talk about each one of them. I'm just first mentioning them. Ot katvu, they wrote in addition to that, דהכלי שנושאים בו מים לחפיפת הראש. They used to have big, large kelim that are called in English basins. In English, a big in Spanish, palangana. A big bassinet, basin, big large thing of water. So the הכלי שעושים בו מים לחפיפת הראש. They didn't have bathtubs, not real bathtubs. They didn't have real showers. The way they did it was that, you boiled some water in a big pot, and you use that for your washing your head and so forth. That's called חפיפת הראש. So a kli שעושים בו מים, that you cook the water in it לחפיפת הראש, to prepare it for rinsing your head. אין לשמש בו, don't use it for cooking. דעושים אותה מאפר שעל הקירה, even for חפיפת הראש, for cooking, is a separate problem. דעושים אותה מאפר שעל הקירה, what they use it with is with the ash that comes from the oven. ורגילות הוא להתערב שם בשר בחלב. It's very often you have a mixture in that efer that comes from the kira, from that ash. You may have a mixture, I should say, from basar and chalav, meat and milk. Okay, another thing that may have that mixture. ולכן, יש לאסור גם כן להשתמש מן הגדרות של התנורים. Also, don't use the big, large pots that sometimes are put בבית החורף, where the heating is, בית החורף, in the house of the winter. In other words, the area where you heat the house. משום דניתזים עליהם לפעמים בשר וחלב, people cook there, and sometimes milk or meat gets sprayed over there, מן הגדרות שמבשלים בתנורים, from all the pots that are cooked there. ובדיעבד, אין לחוש בכל זה, בדיעבד, don't be concerned about any of these חומרס, ואף לכתחילה, אין בזה אלא חומרס בעמל והמקל לא יפסיד. Okay, even if you're makel, lenient, it's okay. Some people are makwe, so we have to just a little bit understand what are these chumras all about. Just real quickly, what is he talking about? What's the problem with all of these? What could be wrong? The Shach, on the first one, about the gderos, of the goyim, maybe having a mixture of basar b'chalav, seems to be saying that the issue would be even if there are only blias, even if there's no real meat and milk, even if all there is bliot, that which has been absorbed in the walls of the pots, it's also a problem. Because now, when you're stoking the fire, that which has been absorbed is cooking too. And that is a problem. Now, if this is accurate, what the Shach is saying, if this is exactly so, it would appear to be saying that the Shach holds like those that yesh bishul achar bishul in basar b'chalav. We did cover it in the very beginning. There is a question whether the halacha of Shabbat, of yesh bishul, of ein bishul achar bishul, I should say, in Shabbat, applies to basar b'chalav too. If it has been cooked already, can you cook it all over again and be transgressing the same isser? Or once it's cooked, it's cooked? Which reminds me, by the way, I just came across something that is somewhat related to basar b'chalav, but it belongs more in Melicha and in Hilchos Dam. There's a sheet that holds that dam that was cooked, you're not over on the deraisa. Do you know that? No. If it was cooked, because it's not royu for the mizbeach. Once you cook the blood, it may, and we don't hold like that. I don't believe we hold like that. We hold like it's a deraisa, depending which blood it is, of course. Yeah, but other than that, there shouldn't really be a difference if you cooked something or not. On Shabbat, it makes a difference because sometimes, if you already cooked it, what are you accomplishing now that you're re-cooking the food? You're just rewarming it, but really there's no issue because you're not transforming it to something else. It's cooked. There's a derabanan, not to heat it up and so forth, unless it's liquid. Liquid, there's some shittas that hold, if it cooled off completely, you for sure cannot warm it up. You have to be careful when you warm up liquid on Shabbat, therefore, if you want to warm it up in some area of the stove, not directly in the fire, that it does not become yat soledet bo. It does not become hot enough that it's very hot for the hand, for the touch, if it was completely cooled off. There's a machlokah between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim of how much it can cool off for you to not to be able to rewarm it again when it comes to liquid. So you have something in the refrigerator you want to warm up on Shabbat, and you want to put it on top of the crock pot on top of the blech in an area which is not directly over the fire, if it has liquid in it, it's going to be a problem. What do you think? It's far then.
Yeah.
In this case, yeah. The Ramah holds that as long as it's still lukewarm, it's okay. Whereas the Shita of the Sfaradim is if it lost its heat, it's no longer Yad Soledet, that's it. Well, there's an opposite Shita altogether, that it has to have cooled off completely. So the Ramah really is a compromise. The Ramah is like a compromise of mezuzah. The Ashkenazim make compromise in mezuzah. There's two Shitas on Hilchot mezuzah. How do you put up a mezuzah? Straight like this? The other Shita says like this. Vertical or horizontal? So what does the Ramah say, the Ashkenazim Shita? In between! And in this way you're okay. Yeah, that's the way the Ashkenazim put it.
Or you can say you're...
Now, whenever you can't, if it's a door where you can't put it diagonally, there's not enough space, you just put it vertically, of course. But the custom is that the Ashkenazim put it on a diagonal, on a slant, as they say. So in this case, they go in between this. He goes in between the two shitot. Not that it cooled off a little bit, not that it cooled off completely. As long as it's still lukewarm, it's okay. If it cooled off completely, we're machmir. Everybody's machmir. On Shabbat, if it cooled off completely, the liquid, completely, you have a glass of tea, and you only drank 3/4 of it, there's still a quarter left. It may be an issue, I say it may, for you to add boiling hot water on top of that little bit of water that's left in the glass, that's cooled off completely. Maybe you're reheating it, all right? Some people are machmir with glass that has some spots of water when they rinsed it. It has spots. It has some drops, I should say. I'm saying drops of water.
Sure,
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone was lenient.
No, but not everybody looks at the glass.
Well, that's not being lenient.
Yeah. Well,
that's being careless.
no, it all depends how you look. There's different ways of looking at drops. But that's the shita legabe bishul achar bishul. It's a whole sugya in Halacha Shabbat as to what can be warmed up, how to warm it up. If there's liquid involved, it's more problematic. Because there may be bishul achar bishul by liquid. We're strict if it cooled off. Now, that question was asked about Basar b'chalav, and we have various opinions. Do we have bishul achar bishul? So from this shach, it would appear to be that he says that there's bishul achar bishul. Because he's concerned even about the bliot in the pot. The guy already cooked meat, he cooked already dairy, and now you're coming to stoke the fire, and those things that have already been cooked, you're cooking it again, but it's been cooked. So if he says that that's the problem, he may be appearing to take the opinion or the side of those that hold that we have to be concerned about bishul achar bishul, even in Basar b'chalav, right? It appears to be like that. Anyway, we see from the shach that at the end he's not so machmir. And the poskim speak about the shach. When he says he's not so machmir, what does he mean he's not machmir? On the fact of bishul achar bishul? Or on this chumrah of the Ramah, he may come to stoke the fire. Which one he says you don't have to worry about so much? So we're not really sure, the shach, in conclusion, what does he tell us not to worry so much about? About the sheet of ein bishul achar bishul? That's not such a big deal. Or about the chumrah itself? Because after all, we're talking about blias here too. It's not the real thing. Anyway, Rabbi Akiva Hager has a whole different mahalach over here. In Shabbat, there's something called davar she'eino miskaven. That's a very interesting sugya. Sometimes people do things and they don't intend to do them. I'll give you an example. You're walking on the grass and you're tearing the grass as you're walking. Can you do it? Are you allowed to walk on grass? You may be tearing some of those grasses as you walk. You're not allowed to tear grass. But in some ways it's okay because it's a davar she'eino miskaven. You don't intend to do it. You know how you sometimes go through a light? You go through a home, and all of a sudden the light turns on. You know those things, sensors? It's not usher. You should avoid it, if at all possible. If you know in advance that you're going to walk through a house, go across the street. Because if you know it's going to happen, then why do it? Now, why is it not a problem? It's not really a problem because it's a davar she'eino, it's only a grama, in a sense. You're only causing it. It's not even a real grama. I mean, it's eino miskaven and eino nichale. What? No. It appears to be a psik. But it's a psikaresha shelo nichale. That's a psikaresha, but it's not nichale, right?
No, it's not a psikaresha.
It's for sure going to happen.
Number one, you don't know that he turned it.
No, you know. We're talking about you know.
No, but
You're right. You
mean
mean
the bulb might be on, but it might be. There
Right,
will be a
that's true.
time when the bulb is broken.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's
It may not be, right,
Yeah. So
yeah.
you never have
Right.
a chicken running around when the head is on.
Right.
When that is on.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yisrael was here.
Right.
He was talking about.
Right.
But someone else, like he said, it's okay. But someone asked him, each time I take the stairs, the light turns on.
Right.
So that's what he needs.
Yeah. That's a
So
problem.
so that's
That's a problem because he enjoys it. He wants it.
So it's a benefits from it.
It's benefits
This is
from.
what he
Well,
wants.
it's not only that he benefits from it. He may want it. He may approve of it. He may be okay with it.
Once he benefits, he has no. Everything else is.
Yeah.
The
So what do you say?
No, he said that one is permissible.
Is more of a problem? Sure.
Rabbi Talber.
Yes.
Which rabbi?
Rabbi Yosef.
Rabbi Talber.
Yeah.
Also, general myths walking by.
Yeah,
these
yeah.
lights and so on. And in San
Right.
he says problem
Why?
because all of the street lights only detect movement.
Is that right?
Yes, in order to save energy.
Don't live in San Jose.
In
All right.
order to save energy,
Yeah.
San Jose has street light. The whole San Jose is dark.
Is
And
that
they
right?
have-
Really?
Yes, and they have sensors. When you're walking down the street, the lights turn on as you go by.
So what?
It's like he's saying.
Really?
It's around there.
Yeah, the lights turn on when you walk by.
Yeah.
So anyone who goes in Friday night, coming home from shul,
Yeah.
is constantly hearing the lights going on, and it's pitch dark.
Yeah.
So you need the lights.
It's mamish going according to the Torah's commandment of on Shabbat you don't leave your home. Ishar Yitzhak.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
he
but it
doesn't-
wouldn't be an issue for you to walk also because you don't care for it. You don't want it.
You do want it.
You don't want
the
it.
light.
You don't necessarily need the light.
Yes, you do. In San
Yeah,
Jose,
in San Jose you
pitch
don't
dark.
have pitch dark.
Pitch
If you're
dark.
driving, maybe I don't know if you're walking. Do you?
Yes, you can
Yeah.
fall. You can stop fall. You
Maybe.
don't know who's waiting for you in the corner.
Yeah. All right. Anyway,
So what did Ralph Lapham do?
No, that was before.
Yeah.
There, when I was in San Jose, that was after he passed away. The light that was normal street was just recently that they followed.
anyway, this is not like the Shita Sa'orach who's matri psikration de lo nichale, but the Rebbe Kiva Eger is done on this. And Davar Sheinu Miskavim. Even was without psikration. So obviously, this would be maybe similar to that. I mean, you're not being miskavim here to do something. So he discusses this point. Anyway, the bottom line with this chumrah of chitui, of stoking, I like what the Chasam Sofer writes. The Chasam Sofer has to write on this the following. He says, there's so many fakers here. There's so many doubts. There's a suffix. Whoever said they cooked meat in it? Whoever said they cooked milk? Whoever said that perhaps, even if they cooked milk and meat, perhaps it's pogrom already by now? And even if it's not pogrom, maybe there was shishim against it already. There was 60 against anything that they cooked. There's so many sfekot over here, the Chasam Sofer says, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah. The second chumrah in the Ramah, not to mix the milk, the water of the meat dishes with the dairy dishes to feed the animals, because it's also behano. The Shach writes on that we're talking about, I believe he says, maim rotchim, boiling water. And therefore there's the Isur of Hanov over here, but in the Torah's Chatas, he seems to be saying that even if the water is not boiling, one should be machmer not to mix the two waters. It's a chumrah. The Shach says only if it's boiling. The Torah's Chatas says even if it's not boiling. Obviously, I mean, the Shach says otherwise without roitchim you don't really have bishul. What's the problem here? Okay. That was the second din. The third din in the Ramah that we spoke about, kli shenotnim bo efer, that efer for the chafifat harosh, for washing the hair, that we treat it like a treif keli, not to use it for food, because maybe the efer, maybe the ash, or the soap, whatever you want to call it, has a mixture of basar and chalav.
To be deriving hana from something that was a bishul of basar v'challah.
Right, even though I think I saw the crazy and placey on this, that he says that if you're using it for the head, it's not a problem. That's not real hana.
For the head, it's not hana.
That's what the crazy placey, if I recall, seems to be saying. Yeah. In other words, you're not having a direct hana from the basar b'chalav here. I think I remember seeing like something like that in the crazy placey. But here, the Pashup shot over here is a little bit different, that we're not dealing with necessarily with the hair problem. We're dealing strictly with the hana'ah of using the efer here. So he says like this, the keli has to be considered treif, not to use it for food, because maybe in the efer there's basar b'chalav. Now, if that's the case, that's the problem with food, with cooking in this keli, why wouldn't the Ramah say that even b'di'evad it should be asur? This is not a chumrah. If that's the fact, if this is what happened, it should even be b'dei evidence. So Elomai, you want to say that perhaps it's pogum. It's nois and tam gam. You may want to say that whatever you have there is nois and tam gam, and therefore it's not a problem. Wait a minute. But basar b'chalav, even nois and tam gam is a problem. Remember we learned that? Shalok derech. That's also crazy place he asks on that. How could you lechatchila cook on something like that? It's even shalok derech, it's also. So what's the answer to that? When we learned about tam gam by basar b'chalav, we made a distinction. It all depends if it was tam gam from the very beginning, or if the basar b'chalav became pogum later. If the basar b'chalav becomes pogum later, it's still a problem. Even if it's rotten, it's basar b'chalav. Shalok derech. If from the very beginning, as you're mixing them, they're pogum, that's not called derech bishul.
Now the basar or the chalav or
right. Right.
It's not called bishul. It's not called basar.
It's not called bishul. It's not called the isur of bishul. Yeah. It's
not. What is it that's the bishul?
That's not derech bishul.
Yeah, but what is it that brings you to fail? Not the bishul. You're doing a proper bishul.
Yeah, obviously.
The ingredients are not really basar b'chalav.
The ingredients are not really basar b'chalav. It's not the bishul of basar b'chalav. Yeah. In other words, that is not. So that's what the crazy place would say on this chumrah, that if we're talking about that from the very start, the whole thing is pogum, then it's not really a problem. That's why lechatchila it's okay to go ahead and do it. And if you want to be machmir, you should be machmir. And b'di'evet it's not a problem. All right. The fourth din was to use those gderes kavuos in the tanur beis hachorev for food, because maybe sometimes there is basar or sometimes chalav on them that is, squirted or somehow lands on it. So on the Dark Moshe explains on that's it's a chumrah. There's no real issue in that because if you have a reusa, potential reusa means a disadvantage, a problem, a potential problem that you've never seen happen. You don't have to suspect it. So to suspect that maybe some milk splashed on that, some meat splashed on that, because it could happen. By the way, when you cook on your stove, you may have a backsplash. You know what a backsplash is? What's a backsplash? Because food splashes, oil splashes. It does. The heat. So that possibility does exist, and that's why he's bringing it up altogether here. But the Darach Moshe explains that since that is a remote possibility, since it's not something that we see happen, just to suspect it may have happened, we don't have to be b'di'evet so machmir. Okay, that takes care of the Ramah. In the next Seif Zayin, we come across a whole different idea that you may never have heard of. Has anybody here heard of a ben pakua? Okay, you go to a schlacht house, you go to a slaughterhouse, right? That's how you call it in English. In other words, where they slaughter the behemoth animals, and you slaughter the cow. You say the bracha, and there's different positions on how to put the cow. There is the laying down position, there's the hanging position, and there's the box position, where the cow is standing straight, but it's enclosed in the box and it can't move. That's not the best position for the animal because it could cause hagrama. In other words, when we learn Hilchos Shchita, we'll get into that. You have to be careful on how you cut, that you don't, and when you have to do it like this, it's going to be a problem. When you're doing like this, at the animals beneath you, it's a lot easier. The Shchita will be done better than if you're doing it this way. They cut too hard. So anyway, or if it's hanging by a chain, hanging down, you come to the throat and zoom, that's it. Now, when it's laying down, this one makes more sense. It's laying down. I'll tell you why. The animal is laying down. You cut up the animal. What happens after you cut the animal? The blood starts squirting out. You move away. Yeah. You go over. You make a slit in the stomach, the bottom of the stomach, and you check the lung. That's very important. You may have to later on take out the lung and check it in the water, like they check the flat tires. Anyway. All of a sudden, as soon as you slit the animal's stomach, you find a calf. And it's alive. Or dead. Have you ever seen one like that? That's called the ben pakua. A calf that has come out of an animal that was slaughtered. Now, it didn't necessarily come out. It's in the stomach. It may come out. There's a special din about ben pakua. A ben pakua that is 8 months old, the full term of an animal in its mother's, full term for a cow, I should say, because every animal is different. A horse, a camel, a rhinoceros, and an elephant, they're different. A cow is about like a human being. 9 months, full term. So if the calf in the mother's stomach is 8 months, whether it's dead or alive, you can cut it up without shechita. How do you like that? You know. You can tell. Oh, you know.
You would have to know.
Yeah, you would have to know. Yeah, you know it, obviously. All right. You'll see it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
Without shechita?
Yeah. In other words, you're obviously not going to shoot it. It just means that you don't have to be makbid until shechita. You can eat it. It's not, you can eat it. You still have to take out the blood and everything. Yes, all that. You don't have to be makbid on halacha trefot, on the regular treifas, unless it's, for the most part, you don't have to be makbid on treifas. That's called a ben pakua. It happens occasionally. I've even seen somebody have a talis bag made from the leather of a ben pakua. Very interesting. Okay, so that's a ben pakua, 8 months. What if it's 9 months and it's alive? Then there's a halacha that it depends on whether it put its feet down on the ground. Once it puts its feet on the ground, because of marit ayin, people see it walking around, and you come and not make shechita on it, you're going to say, what are you doing? You're eating treif. So once it's put the feet on the ground, it requires shechita midrabanan. Why doesn't it in general require shechita, whether it's 8 dead or alive or 9 alive, if it didn't put its feet on the ground? Why shouldn't it require shechita? Because shechitat ha'im matirato. The shechita of the mother releases it from a shechita. You shechted the mother, the calf is included. The calf is a piece of meat, the maaseh of the cow. Very interesting area, ben pakua. Ben pakua has another name, similar. It's called shilya. Shalil. You'll come across the word shalil. What's a shalil in English? The English term for shalil is embryo. What's an embryo? An embryo just means an animal that has developed, or a human being that has developed, that has not been delivered yet. I think that's the best definition, no, Ilan?
Yeah.
Of an embryo? Yeah.
Sure.
That's called shalil. Whereas a ben pakua, even though it's the same thing in a sense, you're finding a shalil, or a ben pakua in the animal, that's called a shalil. It's an embryo, you're finding it in the animal. Once it has stepped out, or especially if it's alive, in a sense it's called a ben pakua. So for the most part, basically the halacha is the same. Shalil is describing that which you find inside, an embryo. Ben pakua is all the terms concerning an animal that may have been born, or not really born I should say, because otherwise it's born. It's not born, but it was taken out alive after the mother's death. So these halachas concerning shechita and treifas, of course, have to do with hilchas shechita and treifas, not with us. But what we want to know is what happens to the meat. Is this meat asur b'basar b'chalav or not? That's all he's talking about here. So I gave you a little bit of introduction of what it is. So mevashel shlil b'chalav chayav. It's regular meat. You can't cook it. Even though you're right, it has certain exemptions, you can't cook it. Chayav, he says. It's not a midrabanan. V'chen ha'ochel, v'chen ha'ochlo, same thing if you eat it. Can't eat it. But that's only shlil, the actual calf, in its embryonic stage. Even if it's alive, it makes no difference. Obviously, if it's alive, you first have to kill it. Aval hamevashel shilyo. Shilyo is not shlil. Shilyo is the placenta. I think that's the best translation of shilyo. And that is the bag that holds either the calf or the human baby. It's called a placenta. All kinds of membrane, all kinds of bloody, all kinds of things. If you've ever seen one. That's called a shilya. If you cook that, or the bones, the gidim, the sinews, va'atzamot, and bones, v'karei karnaim, the main part of the horns, utlafaim, and the hoofs, harakim, the soft ones, patur, you're patur. What does patur mean? You can't do it, but you're patur if you did. V'chen ha'ochlam, if you eat them, you're patur. Okay, so this presents another area of discussion. Because he distinguishes right now from shlil a whole bunch of animal parts that belong to the animal that you're not supposed to cook them, really, But if you did, you're potter, because that's not real meat, and therefore that's not really, doesn't really relate to the issue of Basar b'chalav. And again, we're talking about either the shilya, placenta, or the skin, the hide, the sinews, the bones, the horns. I was in Mexico in a slaughterhouse, and I asked him, tell me, what do you do with the horns, the cow? He says,
How do you do that?
I said, how do you do that? He says, we grind it. We don't put anything to waste here. Now, I don't know if I think he was just exaggerating. I think he was exaggerating, because I know how to make tortillas, and they don't use horns.
Corn?
What?
Corn?
No, you have corn, you have flour, and you also have another kind of tortilla that's made from a plant, a cactus plant. But anyway, unless they mix it with something, I think he was just joking. I think he was just making up a story. I mean, now in China, they do use all kinds of things like that for all kinds of soups. But I don't know. Anyway, maybe he takes it home and makes it himself into something. But the point is that certain bones of hoofs may be used in certain foods, fleischiger food. I'm going to give you a small lesson here on how to make cholent here. Do you know that one of the best bones for cholent, the bone of the feet, some people don't like it because it smells. It has a smell to it. Now, there are some bones that have a gel to them. And those bones that have the gel are used to make something that's called in Yiddish, Polish, Yiddish galer, or in Galician Yiddish called pecha.
It's called pecha.
Yeah, Galician Hungarians. I think it's Galician. Anyway, have you ever seen them? They're little cubes. They serve them as little cubes of fat. Have you ever seen fish left in the refrigerator or chicken? After the next morning, you see this gel develop on top. I think it's called gel, right? So the same thing from these bones, they emit a certain. If you cook them in a certain way, they form a certain gelatinous, that they form into cubes with a little bit of garlic and pepper, of course, and salt, and you eat them with a toothpick. It's very tasty. But anyway, not everybody likes them. So people have used all these things for something. Chabal to throw them out. They serve some purpose. But here the question again is, not can I have them? What happens if it's cooked with milk? They're not really meat, and therefore they wouldn't present a problem. It's potter, but you can't do it anyway. You can't do it anyway, obviously, because it's part of the meat. But in meat, as we will see next week, actually not next week, Thursday, Mr. Hashem, in meat, however, there's different degrees, different grades, I should say. Some meat is, some bones are soft, some bones are hard. The reason why we're not so makbid with bones is because bones don't have that much flavor in Basar b'chalav. But that presents a problem because for some reason we are makbid. When we learned Hilchos Taaruvot, we had a whole discussion about bones. Remember that, Ilan? Yeah. Now with bones, there's several shitas. What happens if the bones of a treif animal got cooked up with your meat? Or what happens if you have...
Well, it depends whether you hold it up a taste or not.
Yeah. No, there's several shitas in bones, and we'll cover it. That's a whole sugya. We'll cover it next time. Basically, I'll just tell you outside. There are shitas that hold that bones atzamos, as it's called, atzamot, mitztarfot leheter o leisur or leheter u leisur, right? There are various shitas. Can a bone help me? I'm trying to be mevatel an isur. I have an isur in the Gdera. I have to measure that I have 60 or roiv against it. Can I use the bones too? Can I count them in the 60 or not? That's the question of atzomos mitztarfos leheter, to be mevatel. Then we have the question about what about the atzomos of the isur? Are they a problem too? So some say the atzomos help us in the heter, and they're not a problem in the isur. In other words, that's the most lenient shita. They have it both ways. Some don't have it both ways. So we will see various shitas on what the function of atzamas is. And why am I talking about that? Because we're going to have to understand the mechaber. The mechaber seems to be saying here what the Rambam says. He emphasizes here harakim, the soft ones. Is he talking about, by the way, the bones rakim? Does he distinguish between bones that are hard and soft? What would be the halacha with hard then? If we say with the hard ones they would be more of a problem, then why is he lenient in Hilchos Taaruvos? with bones. You see what I mean? In other words, if he's going to be lenient in Taaruvot about bones of Isser, right, which I believe he is, right? I mean, that's the sheet over there, the more lenient sheet. Then why over here would he be machmer with bones anymore? What's the issue of bones? But as we said, with bones it may be different when it concerns Basar B'Chalav, because by Nevela, what do we say? We say there's so little tam in bones that it's practically not existent.
Right.
That's what we say over there.
Yeah.
Where over here it may be sufficient to create a problem of Basar B'Chalav. See what I mean?
Just more
For Basar B'Chalav, that summers will be considered more than not barnat, as one before it says. Remember not barnat? We'll talk about in Basar B'Chalav. A taste of a taste, a diluted taste. It's so diluted. Nevertheless, it's a problem sometimes. The tam of atzamas concerning Basar B'Chalav may be more serious, more chomer than not barnat even. If that's the case, then it may be an issue. But in the example of the Mechaber over here, if we're talking about the basic bones and sinews, and at least soft bones, it's potter, which at least tells us that it's lechatchila aser. Lechatchila, they do present a problem. Obviously, who's going to want to cook the well? You want to cook, maybe you're making some medical potion. Who knows? Yeah. But if it's a Basar B'Chalav, you couldn't do that even then. If it's midaraisa, that is. I mean, we're talking about the real animal that is toher, not a treif animal, not a toh animal. So we're obviously more careful. And these items do come very, very close to being meat, even though they're not meat. And therefore, lechatchila it's also. But Mitzvah Shem will continue Thursday with the rest of it.